Hello, this is Corey Durbin, CEO of SHARx, and this is the Rising Tides podcast. Each week, I have the privilege of speaking with influential athletes about their rise to fame, the dedication to their sport, and what it takes to be successful. Let's dive in. Well, this is going to be fun today. I'm joined by Julie Hernandez. She's a member of our SHARx family. And Julie, great to have you with us. Thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled to sit and talk with you.
I've had, a handful of these conversations, whether it's some of our brand ambassadors or some of the providers we work with or whatever. And I think this is the conversation that I've been looking forward to the most. So I'm really excited to visit with you today and hear more of your story. And hopefully it's an encouragement to some of the people that, if we have any listeners, I'm not sure. But you and I will have some fun talking today. But at any rate, how are things going? Doing well?
Things are good. We're trying to survive our Tucson, Arizona summer. And as I said previously, it's only about, 165 degrees out there. But it's a dry heat, right? So
that sounds brutal.
And we're not in Phoenix, where it's about 10 to 20 degrees hotter. So, hey.
So it's nice and cool there compared to Phoenix, right?
That's right.
So where do people in the summertime in Arizona, where do they escape? Do they go like up to Sedona, to Flagstaff, or?
Well, we have all our snowbirds, us zonies, bail out to California. Snowbirds take off across the country. It's so interesting because, Tucson used to just be kind of this smallish, cool college town, anchored by the University of Arizona. So in the winter times, we see license plates from everywhere, across the United States because there again, once our brutal summer is over, the rest of the year, we have phenomenal weather.
Winter's pretty good, isn't it?
Oh, boy. 75 degrees. I mean, one, I guess, downfall is we don't really get those really beautiful changes of seasons. We get summer, and then we get what we quote unquote call winter, but it's not a winter like you would get maybe, in the Midwest back east. So we tough it out and then we love the rest of the year here.
So those winter months make the summer and what you endure there worth it, don't they?
Totally make up for it. Yeah.
Well, so you all and your family have been working with SHARx for, I want to say, a year and a half, but please correct me because I may be well off.
Your team, which was amazing and really set the tone, contacted us, reached out to our family in December.
This past December. Okay.
Yes. And that's how phenomenal and hard your team has worked in just these few months, right? So we were coming on board with a different insurance carrier through my husband's employer, thank God. And your team actually contacted us in December and was, assuring us that they would be working directly with us in trying to secure our daughter's specialty medication. And I can honestly say from my own experience in working in healthcare and dealing with insurance companies, we've never had a team such as SHARx is making that connection to us, giving us assurances, and really promising to work very hard for our family and our daughter, which, like I said, it set the tone of, wow, this is beautiful, because we have been really feeling like our backs were against the wall and we didn't have somebody in our corner. And behold, SHARx showed up. It's been really happy.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. That makes me happy. It warms my heart because that's what I hope every member experiences with us. And we know we're not perfect, but it is something that we strive for. But, the employers we work with, and we work with over 1,000 now around the country, they're all struggling with the same challenge, which is the high cost of specialty meds or other high cost maintenance medications. And how do I make sure that I don't jeopardize my team members vis-a-vis my employees' health? And that's, as you know, that's kind of where we come into play, because you've got these drugs that aren't covered by your plan, and now what do you do? Because you've got a family member really in need. So will you tell
Absolutely.
me about your healthcare background a little bit, some of the healthcare background?
Sure. So I've always kind of been in and around the fringes of healthcare. When Marty and I were first married, I worked in dentistry for quite a few years. Dental assistant, moved into front office, moved into management in front office, and then had many, many children and was needing to be home and raise kiddos. And then entered back into healthcare through health information management at one of our local hospitals here, and spent about 2 years working in that arena. And then the director that I was working under came to me because our hospital at that time was in a situation where we were about 5 to 7 years behind in our cancer registry department. She had seen my work ethic, seen my professionalism, and said, hey, I need you to head up getting us compliant with the state, getting us caught up, really turning that piece of health information management within that hospital around. And so I took the bull by the horns, and just never having worked in that piece of health information management, and fell in love with it because I'm a people person. As hard as it is working in the cancer realm, I got to work with our cancer patients. And so in cancer registry, the way that it works, any hospital that has 50 beds or more, and if you're treating cancer patients, you have to have a cancer registrar. And what that person does is I collect data from their point of contact with us, their point of diagnosis, recording through their treatment modalities, what are their outcomes, and then we follow them. We follow those patients for life. So all of the data from local hospitals goes to our state registry, which then goes to the CDC. So when you see cancer statistics, that's how all of that information is being gathered. That information is driving the research. It's even so interesting that you can drill down. Now in Arizona, it was very interesting for me because we have many reservations within our state, right? And so we even were able to identify within our registry and other registries within the areas high incidences of cancers on reservations up north. And so then you start looking, and the researchers can look at that data and say, why are we having higher incidences of XYZ cancers in those areas specifically? So I love the information. I love the research. It's very interesting, and would have completely stayed in that realm. I was able to start working remotely, which I loved. Being able to be home and work was, it's a dream, right? And crazily enough, I'd been in that career for about 8 years because I was working in and amongst our cancer patients, and because I'd lost my own dad to lung cancer when he was only 55 years old. I was very diligent and very proactive and vigilant about making sure I was doing my screenings, making sure my family was doing their screenings. And
yeah, I can relate. I lost my dad to lung cancer as well, and what I noticed in the process is it seemed he was a very strong man, and it seemed to me that the chemo and the radiation therapy took more out of him than the actual cancer or the tumor itself did. I'm pretty convinced he lives a lot longer and in a pretty satisfied, meaningful way if he hadn't have had the chemo treatments that he had.
And, Corey, so our dads probably came from that same generation of just, hard working, strong individuals. And same thing for my dad. Unfortunately, he grew up on a farm. He was the oldest of 5. And, remember back in the day, you could smoke anywhere, right? You could smoke on planes. You could,
Right. Those were the good old days.
Yeah, he was a smoker and tried many times throughout his life to quit, and just was in that, cycle of not being able to. And he owned his own construction company here in Tucson. They were on a job out of town, and he had fallen ill and came back into Tucson, ran testing. He had small cell lung cancer, which was inoperable. So as you were saying, then he proceeded to go through all of the chemos, all of the radiations, and they gave him initially 3 to 6 months without treatment. With treatment, they were able to extend his life 3 more years, but honestly, those last, I'd say, a year and a half was not quality of life at all.
No.
I watched my big 6'4", 200 and some dad, my hero, just wither. And it was so heartbreaking for me because him and I had such a connection. And to that point, his strength, even when he was going through these treatments, he was still going to job sites. It got to the point where my husband, Marty, who's a technician, auto tech, he had to disable his truck so my dad could not drive anymore.
That sounds familiar. Yeah, it sounds like my dad was working up till the day he died. He was.
He wouldn't give up.
Yeah. Well, I know you and I have spoken before, and I know your dad really meant a lot to you. Obviously, he still does. And you told me a story or two about some of the values he instilled in you. And I don't know if you want to share a little bit about what that story was, where it kind of came to life for you, or, what it meant to you as you have raised your own family.
I think there's two things that, here, when you think about our timeline for our lives, Corey, it's so interesting because he only had 55 years here, right? And I was 32 when he passed away. So he packed a lot of life and lessons for me into that very short amount of time. And I credit that just with the way that my grandparents, what they had instilled in him growing up. Like I said, he was raised on a farm. He was the oldest of 5. He gave up a full basketball scholarship to Syracuse to stay on the farm, help his dad. So work ethic, resilience, 2 huge value character systems, and then faith. Faith was woven into every piece of the lessons that he would give to me. So when we had the big ranch southeast of Tucson, I would have horses saddled when he would come home. And I knew he was dog tired, but that was our time. And we would ride out into the monument. And those were some of the best times, Corey, because those were the times that my dad and I had, and he could talk to me. And we did a lot of talking about life and how, as the saying goes, you fall down, you've got to get back up. What choice do you have? You're going to stay down and choose to be a victim, or you get up and keep fighting, right? We only get this one life, and then we go on into eternity. And so all these lessons are carving us for that greater life that we're going to exist in beyond this, right? His thing was every challenge was an opportunity. And these are the things that Marty and I tried to instill in our kids. Life is going to be hard. You're going to have things that just devastate you, just knock you down, take you to your knees. And through your faith and through your optimism and through your work ethic and looking at opportunity, you just push. It's that perseverance.
Yeah. And it's also where the challenge is, and where you've come from is what makes the experiences of fulfillment even more fulfilling. And you shared a story about you taking a phone call when you were working for your dad's company, I think.
Oh, yes.
And that's a pretty cool story to me that talks
about
share that with you. What your dad was like and what you learned from him.
Who he was, right. He was. So, as I said, he owned his own construction company. And, Corey, that's even a story in itself. We came to Arizona from upstate New York in 1972. I was 5 years old. So I call myself an almost native. And this, as the story goes, he followed his parents out here because my grandfather had asthma, and his doctors, when he retired, said, you've got to get to a dry community, and Tucson's dry. So my dad came to Tucson knowing nobody, having no job, moved his young family here, just with the fact that he wasn't going to shovel snow anymore, and started as a painting contractor on his own. Then moved into getting his contractor's license, doing custom remodeling, never did a lick of marketing, advertising, nothing. It was all word of mouth referrals. And I, being his young daughter, he put me to work. And so my job was to take phone calls at home when he was working. Back in the day, probably pre-cell phone, right? And so I'll never forget. Construction is feast or famine. It's just the nature of the business, right? And my dad knew that his guys depended on him for their income, for their families. He knew that they all had families that were depending on them and depending on him to make things happen. And so I'll never forget, I got this phone call. The man on the other end was crying, and I thought, oh my gosh, he's been hurt at a job site. What's going on? He said, is your dad home? Is Roger there? And I said, no, I'm sorry, he's not, but how can I help you? He paused to kind of pull himself together. And he said, I just want you to know, if you don't already know this, what an amazing man your father is. And he said, I did get hurt on the job site. And he goes, not one of his job sites, because he runs clean, safe job sites. He was a sub, and he had gotten hurt on another job site. He said, your dad found out about it. And he said, my wife and I just had a baby a few weeks ago. I get hurt. I can't work. Your dad has shown up every Friday with groceries, diapers, and money for me and my family, even though I'm not working. And then I started crying because I did know this about my dad, but he was all about quiet action, right? He didn't want recognition for this. And that was another thing that just through being his daughter, seeing how he treated people, as the saying goes, from the janitor to the CEO, there was no difference in how he treated people. He was always kind. He was always, would give the shirt off his back, shake hands. Your word is your bond. I don't think he ever had a written contract the entire time he did business, because when he shook hands and gave somebody their word, he would fulfill that, So,
yeah, what an impression that moment must have made for you, and
and I was young.
As his daughter.
I was young. I was maybe 12, 13 years old when I took that phone call. And Corey, the thing that my dad did for me, which meant so much to me, and the one thing that my dad always made sure was that I had horses in my life, because he felt you're either going to invest on this end, be it sports, animals, whatever it is that your family may choose, right? You're either going to make that investment on this end, or you're going to be making an investment in, how are we bailing these kids out of jail now? Are we getting treatment for them? And I have a funny story. He rode me out one time, me and my brother, because the ranch that we were on was a really cool old ranch. It had been a dude ranch back in the 50s. In Southeast Arizona, in Tucson. And he purchased the original ranch house with 3 acres and then leased the other 75 to run our horses and cattle on. And so on one of those rides, we went out. I was probably about high school age, just starting high school, and my brother's 4 years younger. And we rode out, and he said, pick your mesquite tree or pick your cactus. And we're looking at him going, what is he talking about? Has Dad been in the heat too long? And we were just confused. And he goes, I'm going to tell you something right now. He said, it's going to hurt me more than it would ever hurt you guys. But if you ever go down the wrong direction or the wrong path, hope that the law enforcement gets to you first. He said, because if I get to you, you have disrespected me and all of the hard work and all of the lessons and efforts that I've tried to pour into you in a positive way. So pick your view. Pick your cactus, pick your tree, and that's going to be your final resting place as far as I'm concerned. And, Corey, we did not doubt those words. We took him very seriously. We took him at face value. We knew.
He didn't have to bail you out of jail, apparently. So
never.
That's
never.
Good.
Yeah.
So these things, they make such an impact. It's always interesting, the things that stick with us, right? And
right, that you carry forward.
They do. And as you go forward and you went forward, then eventually, at what point you had one of your daughters get fairly ill, right?
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell us when that started and a little bit about that?
Sure. So Miss Riley, she presented, and this is heartbreaking that she's been dealing with this for so long. At about 7 or 8 years old, she started just having some pretty serious GI issues. And of course, you start the whole process going to primary, then going to specialty. And it feels like very much that medicine in today's world, in America anyways, that it's kind of like, well, we'll just throw things at the wall and see what's going to stick, right? The feelings that we were getting as we went through this process of trying to get a solid diagnosis for her. And as a parent, you can attest to this. It is the worst thing to see your child suffer and
question. Yeah.
And not be able to figure it out or help her. And so we continued on through this process, tried many different things that every physician who very much meant well and who were very much using the tools at their disposal and who very much were trying very hard on her behalf in working within the realm of what will insurance approve, writing letters of appeal and doing peer review and learning all these ins and outs of how we have to just keep pushing, right? So she continued forward. She did not get better. She aged out of peds GI. I say that's probably the best thing that could have happened to her in a lot of respects, because then we ended up over an adult GI and switched over into a whole new facility that she was going to, new doctors. And they immediately went right to work on her, looking back at her history, looking at all the treatments that had been tried. And within weeks to very short months, we had a diagnosis for Riley. The dilemma being, here were the specialty medications that she was going to need to help her. And then the cost of these specialty medications was dumbfounding. When they sat us down for that piece of it, Corey, we were like, per dose? Per dose?
It's shocking, right?
It was very shocking. And so she was able to get on the biologics starting in the beginning of fall of 2024 was when they started her on the biologic. And I mean to tell you, you've watched this child suffer for years and years and years. And within months, there was a complete turnaround to her health. It was amazing.
So it was 7 or 8 where some of the symptoms started to appear. We deal with and work with so many members now that either they or one of their loved ones has an autoimmune condition, and it seems like it's getting worse, right?
Yes.
As far as the numbers, the percentages of people going through that. Did anything prior to that date give you concern, or was it nothing really surfaced until that point? I think sometimes our stories can be helpful to others, so I'm just curious.
In looking back, trying to figure out, because when we moved over into adult GI with her, they did a very comprehensive history on her. Was there an event? Was there a known trigger that all of a sudden, and really we could not identify one. It was just this kind of slow burn to really, a much more serious situation where she was experiencing much worse symptoms and very sick. And, you go to the ends of the earth trying to figure this out. And I did listen. This is interesting because I did listen to your podcast that you had with Dr. Ertley over at Invita. I love what they're doing, and I'm so impassioned and fired up about what Invita and SHARx are partnering to try to do for their patients. And the one stat that he said that really broke my heart, and so we've got to figure this out, is that our children will live not as long as our parents or grandparents did. And that stuck with me, Corey, because it's like, what is going on?
How are we going that way? Yeah.
Well, how are we going the other direction, right? Our kids should be living longer than us, right? And this is the first generation where we will see our children live not as many years as our parents or grandparents have. So it wakes you up, and it really makes you start asking the serious questions. Honestly, what the heck is going on? What are we not doing right? What can we do better?
Yeah, I think and I think I talked about this with Dr. Lay, but things that you find out later that if you knew them early on, then it would maybe change how you parent as your kids are young. But for us, it was only a few years ago that we found out my wife had 2 C-sections with our daughters and had to, obviously, because of medical reasons and whatnot. And what you find out is the gut health is majorly inhibited in the beginning if your children are not born through a vaginal delivery.
Absolutely.
And so I think more people know about that now. Obviously, you would know with the things that
Right.
you've gone through with Riley.
Right.
And that, but it also doesn't mean that it has to be this cell sentence, like you're
Exactly.
like, there is a pathway. And
Right.
I think that's the journey you're on, right? With your own daughter.
100%.
Like, let's not resign ourselves that this is the way it has to be.
So in the traditional medicine, that the way that medicine is practiced here in the States is unfortunately the doctors, again, their hands are tied in the sense of what will insurance cover, what will it not cover, how can we figure this out, which is very maddening from a parent's perspective, because her physician is telling us one thing, telling us these are the medications that our daughter needs. And then the insurance company is coming back and saying, oh, no, we're not going to cover those. And it just, it's this fire in your gut that it's the most frustrating situation to have her physician say, these are the medications that are going to help your child. And then an insurance company say to you, nope, sorry, those aren't going to be covered.
Right.
And so I think, too, in listening to Dr. Ertley speak, one of the things that I love about what he's also moving forward, and I do think this is the direction that I know it's going to be fundamentally very difficult, having worked in healthcare, but really treating patients as individuals, really looking at the data and using the technology that's coming available to really figure out what is the trigger? What is causing the disease for Riley? Why do we just need to keep dumping her full of meds to treat symptoms when we should be finding what it is that is turning on these inflammatory immune situations that's causing her these health issues? That's
right. That's the better question, right? Like what's not right, and so let's figure out.
We need to drill down to that. Yes.
Yeah.
Because for me, as her mom, having to go to these appointments with her, and one of the hardest appointments we had, it was both good and bad. Good in the sense, okay, now we have a diagnosis. Now we can treat, right? Now we can move forward. But then again, in listening to Dr. Ertley, here's the problem. There's these protocols. Are these protocols going to work for my daughter, or are we just, again, let's throw things at the wall and we're going to see what sticks? Luckily, with the GI doc that we have for her, she's just incredible. I can't say enough good things about her. She really felt that what she was going to recommend for Riley was really going to turn her around. And it did. And we were, thrilled to tears, honestly, having watched our daughter suffer for such a great length of time and then see her be able to gain her life back. Because, with these autoimmune diseases, they can just be so debilitating. And she's 21 years old. She wants to be living life. She's going to college. She wants to work. She wants to be with her peer group. She wants to be a regular 21-year-old, right? And live life. And doesn't want to quit, doesn't want to give up, doesn't want this disease to define her. And so I think the direction that we really need to start looking at is, how can we move in a direction with our healthcare where we're treating people in such a way that we're really drilling down to causes and not just treating symptoms? Is that going to be a cost saver? I think it could. I think even with my own cancer therapy and my cancer treatments that I went through, the first thing they did with me before they ever gave me one chemo treatment. And I will never forget this. And my poor eldest daughter, who was my advocate and, accompanied me to all of my appointments, the first thing they did was take us into the financial room and, okay, here's how much your chemo treatments are going to cost. Here's what your insurance will cover. Here's what they will not cover. How do you plan to pay for them? And these figures in our mind were astronomical. I mean,
sure. Yeah.
It could have been $1 billion and we didn't have it, right?
Right.
So then I'm looking at this financial person going, okay, well, are you treating me today then? Or are we not? Because there's no way that we have the funds to do even one chemo treatment.
Yeah, and I mean, you've heard, my business partner's story. I think, his two sons have a specialty orphan disease that their drugs cost $2.5 million a year. So
Corey.
that's unobtainable for just about everybody on the planet. And it shouldn't be the case, right? So with our company, that's why we said, okay, we have to find a balance between making sure the member and their family can get what they need and that the employer doesn't feel like it's going to destroy their company financially. Because every employer we work with wants to know that their employees and their families are taken care of. They absolutely do.
100%.
And they also have to keep their doors open. So
that's right.
So tell me about your experience with SHARx and how has having the advocacy support helped your family? What's that been like for you all?
I wish I could put this to words, Corey, and I'll do my best here. It has been one of the best experiences that our family could ever have in this situation, honestly. So what ended up happening with Riley is from October of 24 until June of 25, she was doing phenomenal. She was on the biologic. All of her testing was showing that her body was responding. And this young girl had felt better than she had in years. And then all of a sudden we get a letter from this prior insurance company. I will not name them. We get a letter in the mail, of course, and all of a sudden, abruptly, they've decided they are no longer covering her medication. So I immediately contact her physician. They do letters of appeal. They do peer review.
And this was sorry to interrupt you, but that was like July of 25?
Yes, July 25. Okay. So they start the whole process. And here, when you think about that from a physician standpoint, I believe the majority of them went into medicine to treat their patients, to help people, right? Sure. To not have to spend time writing letters and sitting on phone calls and doing appeals. It's just the most frustrating situation. And I told her physician, I said, well, let me know what I can do, because by God, I'll be writing letters. I'll be making phone calls. Corey, if you pull my phone records from like June of 25 forward, it's ridiculous, honestly. The amount of time that I spent on phone calls with people that kept saying no to us. Right? So then their answer to this was, oh, well, we'll put her on a generic biosimilar, right? This is the answer we get. And so her physician came to me and said, well, what are we going to do? They keep turning us down. We might as well try the biosimilar, see where we get with this, right? Because we don't want Riley off of her medication for too long. So sure enough, in August, we get the biosimilar, and it was a nightmare. She had not only a complete return of all of her symptoms, but it was horrifically worse. I mean, she had joint pain in her hips. She called me from her room one morning, from her phone. We're in the same house. And she said, crying, she said, Mom, I don't think I can get out of bed. My hips and my joints hurt so badly. And this is part of her autoimmune disease. So I was so enraged, and I called her doctor. I said, what can we do? They're treating her symptoms, putting her on steroids to try to reduce the inflammation. Again, we're still battling with this insurance company. I was at the point, Corey, where I said to my husband, I will fly to their main offices to meet people face to face, because I'm getting nowhere on phone calls, right? Her physician is getting nowhere. I mean, they wrote no less than 10 letters of appeals. She did no less than 5 peer review phone calls, right?
Wow.
And the physician is the one that went to med school. The physician is the one prescribing these medications. We were informed in about October of 25. Obviously, Marty's employer was going through open enrollment, and by the grace of God, we were switching to a new insurance company. And we were informed that SHARx would be coming on board to help us with the procurement of specialty medications for Riley. So, I mean, you should have seen our house. Like, we were jumping for joy because we thought, oh my gosh, you mean we're going to have a whole team on our side that's going to be fighting for Riley's specialty medication, not just a big insurance company. We're going to have one specific team that is working with us. Really, there were tears. I mean,
that's awesome. Yeah.
I can't put that to words. And then, like I said, your team reached out to us before we even transitioned over to our new insurance company in December and laid out a plan. And come January 1, your team and me and Riley's physician, we went to work. And it did take some time because, again, there's the red tape inherent with this process, right? We were new members to this insurance company. We were new members to SHARx, right? So there's just inherently, there's the red tape.
Yeah, that's a flaw in the system just in general. All the PA,
right.
all the prior authorization work, all the things that go into that right. process can
on that end
add to the stress for sure, which is one of the things we try to alleviate because it's hard enough to go through it on your own, and the maze of navigating healthcare in general is hard even when you're in it and you know how to navigate it, and you've got a healthcare background. It's super hard, especially when you're in the middle of the stress that is accompanied when someone in your family is going through a medical challenge.
Absolutely. And I told my eldest daughter when I was going through all my cancer care, I said, thank God you and I, because she's a medical coder, I said, thank God that you and I do have a medical background and can make sense of these things. How sad is it for the hundreds, thousands, millions of individuals that don't have the knowledge that we had because of our background in healthcare, that are trying to navigate these processes by themselves? My heart breaks for them. And then, I'm a bulldog. I'm just tenacious. It's just part of my DNA. And I wasn't going to take no for an answer. I wasn't going to give up. And then when your team came on, it was phenomenal, Corey, because then we had this concerted effort. We had the common goal. And then we had more than just Julie and Riley's doctors. We had a whole team of people that were coming at it from a completely different angle that I honestly, before you guys, didn't even know was available. There just aren't words. They're just, it's phenomenal.
I appreciate you sharing that.
That we got supported.
The fact that you reached out in your email and shared what you shared with our team about the impact that our team had made for you and your family, I would say that's the hope that our team has every day. And I think many days they feel like they are having that impact. And it's not always that somebody is as grateful. And that's okay. That's not, there's no requirement when families are in the middle of the things that they're going through. And I can tell you that it was significantly meaningful and it was emotionally uplifting for our team to hear from you about the impact that they made. And that helps them to keep going because there's some hard days in what we all have to do, whatever our work is, right?
I think what I really wanted to convey by reaching out was that every team member that we came into contact with within your organization, and specifically the one that I was very much appreciative because she stayed on it. I mean, she was a bulldog too. And
Sarah, she's awesome.
Sarah is phenomenal. She would call me without me ever having to make contact to her. But what I really wanted to convey was the fact that your team members, and I don't know if this is in the training or the culture that you have created there, but We never felt like a number with your company. We never felt like just a name on a computer screen. We never felt like just, oh, this is one more phone call that I've got to make today, and I've had 50 really hard ones. Whenever they got to us, it was like we were their first call of the day, and it was like, let's go to work. How are we getting this done? We're just going to keep pushing until we do. So I have to tell you, there's never been a company, honestly, Corey, in our fight for Riley from 7 years old on, she's 21 years old. There has never been a team. I mean, and this is not to knock her physicians. They've all been phenomenal. They've all fought on Riley's behalf, especially her current physicians have really fought hard for her. But there's never been an interim or a middleman team, which is what your company is, who's come along beside us and really given us that reassurance, the support, and honestly, the biggest word is hope. Hope that we can get Riley to the other side of this again, Well,
that's what we want. Yeah. Well, and thank you. That's, like I said, that means a lot for me too. Getting the acknowledgement and then even being able to model, like, this is the difference, that little extra going out of your way and making sure somebody knows you care. And it's a saying, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's what we really do, try to instill that in our culture.
Absolutely.
And we want SHARx to be something that employers do for their employees and their team members, not to their employees. And we've pushed back against the narrative from middlemen, from sometimes in big pharma. Sometimes it's just outside vendors that want to somehow say that we're going to hurt the member, that what we do hurts the member. And I think we feel like it's the opposite.
I think what I would say is I would switch around that middleman connotation, and I would say you are the patient's partner. You are these companies' employees' partner. It's a partnership. And, what's interesting is Marty's employer, head of HR, and another administrator within HR reached out to me personally because I had sent letters. I mean, I'm a mama bear. I'm a letter writer. And so I had sent letters and I had commended you to them and said, I don't know what the processes were behind your decision to work with SHARx. Our family will be forever grateful that you made that choice and that decision. And the HR team reached out to me directly and said, we were a little concerned at first because this is a completely new model for them, right? So Marty's been in this employer with them for 9 years, and they were used to, we just do an insurance company. This is what we do. This is how we work, right? And so the head of HR said to me, they said, we really were, hesitant in one respect that how is this model going to help us? How is this going to help our employees? Is this going to be the right decision? And I had to, say to them, not only was this the right decision, it was absolutely the critical and imperative decision that changed the trajectory of Riley's medication and being able to be healthy again. And, I think what I try to express to them, we're all in the human business, right? If we're employed, I think, in any business, we're all in the human business. We're all in business, I would think, to help individuals, to help human beings, right?
That's right.
And so the decision that they made to, kind of go out on a limb, try something different, try something new, completely impacted our family in 180-degree positive way because it turned things around for Riley and she was able to get back on these medications that she so desperately needs. I had shared with them, Riley went from going to campus, going to classes, to she's off her medication now since June of 25. Her body is falling apart. She's going completely backwards. She came to us and said, can I just do all online college? And it broke my heart you know, because I
Yeah.
need her to be out there. I need her to be on campus. I need her to be in her
Right.
peer group. She needs that support, right? So just the decision that they made to go out on a limb and work with your company changed our lives, changed Riley's life.
Thank you. Thank you
So
for telling us that. And this is something, your employer Purcell, is that right?
yes,
Are
yes.
they out of, where are they out of? St.
They're
Louis?
Potosi, Missouri, I believe.
Oh yeah, yeah, I thought they were in Missouri Company, and
Yeah.
I don't always know all this stuff anymore, because it doesn't always make its way to me. But yeah, I had been familiar with them. That's awesome. And one of the things we're doing is we've talked about Dr. Ertley, but in Envita is we want that path to be a path that also provides that next level of hope, right? I know you've had some conversations with Envita, but number one, they're incredibly great at oncology care because they do. Man, I wish my dad would have known about it and I would have
I
known about
know.
Envita. They do
I know.
targeted oncology care. So the chemo and the radiation treatment goes right to the tumor. It doesn't go anywhere else in the body. And
And
so
destroy the
100% of that.
right.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yes.
I walked through Envita's hallways and seen the patients who are in the middle of chemo, and they
Right.
look as happy and healthy and full heads of hair
And not
as
depleted and sick. And, I came to the middle of my chemo treatments, Corey, and in my mind, the whole entire time, I would think about my dad and I would think about, because he went through chemo treatments in the 90s. And so I'm sure it was probably even harsher than what we have available today. I went through mine
right.
9 years ago. I think about how that man handled the chemo, the ton of chemo that they gave to him, how he was able to handle the radiation along with the chemo and continue to work. I mean, there were days when my husband would find me on our tile floor in the bathroom, and that was
Right.
as far as I could get because I just wanted to lay on the cool tile of the floor. That was what was making me feel better in the midst of chemo. And I said to him, I don't know, I just don't know if I can finish. I don't, my two youngest were 12 and 15, and I had to finish. And thankfully, we have a very dear friend that we went to high school with, and he was in the Navy, and Marty had been communicating with him, and he called me up. And man, he was like a drill sergeant. And he was like, you will get off that tile floor and you will hydrate and you will, he goes, I don't care if it's mashed potatoes that you need to eat every day to keep you going, but you will move forward, And then in his gentler way, he said to me, I don't care what time of the day or night it is. Don't wake Marty up because I know he has to go to work and I know he's already so worried for you. And he said, but you call me when you need your encouragement. And he goes, and we're going to talk through it and we're going to push and we're going to get you there.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It was.
That's awesome.
It was,
this is the pockets of time like we talked about earlier that, yeah, there's lots of stuff that comes at us in our lives and it's hard and we all face challenges, but those moments where the sweet stuff the hard things make the great stuff even better. They make it
better.
Yeah, it really does.
You know how far you've come. You know how hard you fought. And I think for me as a mom, there were two things with that was very hard for me, Corey. On the one piece of it, I wanted to protect all my children, right? I did not want them to have to see me going through this. For young children, our kids were 12, 15, 21, Clay was 24, and Kelly was 27. So here I've got these kids that are seeing their mom, who was strong as a horse, a bear, right? Carry anything, A personality. Got my 5-year plan, got my 10-year plan, right? Nothing's holding me back. And I was knocked to my knees. So on the one piece of it, as a mom, I wanted to protect my kids. But then on the second piece of that, I wanted them to see that through the miracle of our faith and the miracle of the science available and my tenacity and fight, that God was not only going to bring me to it, but he was going to bring me through it.
Yeah,
you know?
amen.
And, my husband said to me, he goes, as a stubborn Irish woman that you are, he said, I guess God had to take you down this far in order to help you understand that you've got to lay it on him. And boy, was that a testament to that. Because let me tell you, in the beginning of my diagnosis, I was pretty mad with my faith and with God. And I was like, this was an interruption, right?
Yeah,
This was
right.
this was an interruption to Julie's plans, right? And
We don't like when our own plans get interrupted, that's for sure. So
that's right.
yeah, we have our idea of how things should go. But what I say is, you never know. And I tell my daughters this, like, you never know what a day can bring. So you keep showing up, and you may be that close to your breakthrough. You are close to your breakthrough, but you don't know how close you are, I guess.
Exactly.
And you kind of had a scare recently, right? Or is that something you want to talk about or not?
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. So my diagnosis was 9 years ago, and unfortunately, I was diagnosed with 2 of the most rare types of breast cancer at the same time. So I was dual diagnosis. When my surgical oncologist saw me in the beginning, she did not know if I would hold at stage 3C. And if I did not hold at stage 3C, they would offer palliative care and trials to me. And like my dad, it was all these flashbacks. I was given 3 to 6 months if I couldn't hold in staging. So my original PET scan, here you go, by the power of prayer and miracle of science, somehow I held at stage 3C, and I got the phone call, and she said, are you ready to go to war? And I said, you throw everything you can at this, because I will battle until God says you're done. And so here we went. We went to war. And crazily enough, with faith and science, I went through 6 very harsh chemo treatments. I was doing on top of that 2 types of immunotherapy. I had 13 months of immunotherapy along with just those 6 treatments of chemo. I chose for very aggressive surgery with my surgical oncologist. And then I went through 37 radiation treatments and still going through the immunotherapy. So my surgical oncology called me after my surgery, and we were looking towards hopeful surgical pathology, right? And she said, are you sitting down? And I said, because you don't know, is this good or bad? She said, Julie, in all of my years of practice, you are the very first patient that has come to me, with the types of diagnosis that you've had, and you had a pathological clear response to all of the treatment. Every tissue that we submitted at surgery, every lymph node was clear. There was no residual cancer.
Yeah.
So I, for 9 years, have been what they term NED, no evidence of disease. Recently, I had just lots of bone pain, joint pain. That could be age. They do my DEXA scans every year. And so in seeing my oncologist, I said, I just am worried that something's up. Even though I'm 9 years out, and you think, okay, 5-year mark is the biggie, because if you can get 5 years out, they say, oh, then you're going to be doing really well. Well, I'm 9 years out. So she recommended a PET scan for me. And again, we gather those warriors, and due to our faith and science, you hope for the best outcomes. And she was able to call me at 9:30 at night, as soon as she had read my PET scan, and said there is no evidence of a return of any malignancy. I mean, power of...
That's a good day.
That's a good day.
Yeah.
So what they're going to do, unfortunately, what they found is, just because of the treatment situation that I've had and the estrogen deprivation that I've been in for those 9 years because of treatment, I have osteoporosis in my spine. And so next week, I go in to start some infusions to try to help my bone density and treat things from that standpoint. But having the NED on a PET scan is like winning the lottery as far as I'm concerned.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
Good
now,
news.
thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think there's always people out there that they need hope, and they need to know that there are people that have been through battles that,
Yep.
they might be in the middle of now, because we're either in a battle, coming out of one, or probably going into one. You've been going to Envita a little bit, or beginning that process with Envita.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we're excited about that for you, because I'm optimistic that this is the next path. I don't know for Riley, but we want to help in that process, and we want to see this not be something she just has to manage all of her life, but something
Correct.
like you and your cancer that she overcomes.
Right. Yeah. And you know what, Corey, having gone through these things in my own situation and watching my daughter go through this, I think, gosh, the beauty of Riley, she's such an incredible young woman. I love her spirit, because you can approach this situation that she has one of two ways. You can be beaten by it, or you can rise. And Riley has chosen to rise. And she is a person who, and I love this about her, because she doesn't have to be this way. She doesn't have to be an open book. She doesn't have to share her experiences. She could be quiet about it and go along and just do her life, right? But she is like me in the sense that we want to share our stories. We want to help others. And, I was telling Marty the other night, gee, put me in front of Congress if this is what needs to happen. Put me out there, put Riley out there, because I think this is what's going to need to happen. They need to see real people going through these things. And how are we getting to the other side of it? How are we managing? How are we surviving? How are we continuing to have hope and a positive attitude, right?
Right.
So we're in the fight. And if we can help SHARx and we can help Envita, we're right there. We want to be on that team. We want to be the ones that are hopefully giving people hope. I mean, even if we don't have amazing breakthroughs for ourselves, we still want to share that message of hope. That's important.
Yeah, I'm not sure everybody thinks that way. Of course, just because we can all get kind of caught up in our own circumstance, and that's very understandable, of course.
Mm-hmm. Sure, because it's exhausting.
Yeah, it is. And
Yeah.
we want to be a company that delivers hope to people, and I think what we would like to see is find ways that we eliminate the needless middlemen. We never mark up a cost of a drug. That's
Right.
not how SHARx works. And we have more avenues coming that we can make sure that these drugs are still obtainable for everybody. And in the
Right.
meantime, we want to find avenues that hopefully help the SHARx members, to go, well, maybe I don't have to resign myself to the fact that I have to live like this forever. Yes, we need to
That's
manage
right.
and treat it in the near term, but what
Right.
if this didn't have to be something that you say, this is my sentence, this is what I'm sentenced to.
Right. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's the goal with SHARx, but
Well, we
it's
love
awesome.
it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story. Is
Yeah.
there anything that I can do for you?
Just keep being the team leader that you're being, because I think you have an inspiring attitude, and I think the saying goes that is from the top, that trickles down to your entire team. And I think that's what needs to happen. And I think your team understands how you are, Corey, in the sense that if we can help one person, then we can help another person, and then that person can go out and help somebody. And you and your team helped us. So that lights a fire under us to say, who can we help? Who can we inspire? Who can we give hope to? Because honestly, I'll tell you, last year in the thick of it, I was losing hope. I was feeling very hopeless. And so your company, your team, you specifically, have come alongside with our family and really restored that there are good people in this world. There are people out there that are going to take the time to reach out and help us. We aren't just a number or a name on a screen. We are a family that, one, needs that assistance, and two, is willing to turn around and give back as well.
Well, thank you, Julie. I mean, that's
You're
very kind of
inspirational.
you. But your words and your story and the part you're playing is oxygen to us, and it's easy to continue to do what we're doing when we meet people like you and your family, and we hear your story, and we see the kind of the impact that it starts to have. And yeah, we
Yes.
just want that for you and your family, and for all the people at the company you work with and the companies that we work with, and it's inspiring, and you're
Well,
inspiring, so thank
I,
you.
I hope there's a way that when you're making your information available to employers, and I look at it like just kind of how Purcell, when they called me and said, we were kind of hesitant, this is new, it's a new process, look how much it helped just us. And I'm assuming that there's other employees within this company that it's helping. And I just happen to be a vocal one. I just happen to be loud, right? So I'm hoping there's a way that we can spread this message to other employers that you need a team like SHARx to come alongside of you and to help your employees, to help these patients to, one, right now, like you said, lock down and get the medications that they're needing for their treatments, because you don't want to be in the situation where
Right.
I was a sole mad mama that was fighting a big, huge insurance company with the help of physicians, and we were getting nowhere. I mean, literally hitting a brick wall. And usually for me, Corey, a brick wall is an opportunity. I'm either going to bust through it, I'm going to dig under it, I'm going to climb over it. You don't put that wall in front of me when it comes to my kiddos, right? And wow, this was a wall that I could not get through. And it was the most frustrating, hurtful, painful thing as a mom, and even for my husband as a dad, to watch our daughter suffer because we were getting these no's. And it wasn't necessary. That's not how it should be, because, like Marty said to me, he's paying his premiums every month. Purcell is backing him, paying their portion every month. How is it that we're paying for all these things like we are supposed to, and then they're withholding our daughter's medication that her doctor has prescribed for her health?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a challenge, and that's why employers bring us in the mix to make sure that we can help procure that medication and do it at a price that everybody can afford.
Corey, it should be the standard of care. When you talk about standards of care, what you are doing for these employers and their employees and patients, this should be the standard of care. And I know, like, looking back, the reasons that you and your business partner had for starting SHARx, and I mean, our family couldn't be more grateful, but I'm sure there's hundreds and thousands of other families that are out there that you've impacted their lives in positive ways. This should be the standard of care going forward, because this is what we have to work with right now, right? And what we've always told our kids, you do the best you can with what you have at that time, and then hope for and push for better odds and circumstances going forward, right? That's just what you do.
Your family is lucky to have you as their mother, and you have overcome and persevered a lot, Julie, and thank you for just the impact that you're making for your own kids, but also I believe that this is going to have an impact for a lot of our members and employer groups that we work with, and so that's meaningful to us too, because we know that the serendipities that happen when families and their children are positively impacted,
right?
And the serendipities from that are extensive, and so this is an awesome conversation. I hope we get to do it again, and I want to have this conversation again after Riley gets on the other side of what she's on. So
yeah, we're really looking forward to that. We're very hopeful. As I've said to you, we can't express the amount of gratitude that we have for your piece in this, and how much that means to Riley and to our family as a whole. Really, you're good people. Like, what's the saying? Good people helping good people do good things, right?
The feeling is very mutual. So thank you, but it's very mutual, and it means the world to me that you would take the time and that you would share your story, and that we would get a chance to visit, and hopefully a lot of people get to hear the impact that you've had, that your own family's had, and just the way you've persevered in your own life. It's very meaningful. Yeah.
100%.
Thank you, Julie.
Well,
Appreciate
thank you. Appreciate you too. Look forward to speaking with you again very soon. And thank you for inviting me to come on.